It shows a will most incorrect to heaven, a heart unfortified, a mind impatient, an understanding simple and unschool'd. This is one of the first lines I've underlined in my bilingual edition of Shakespeare's Hamlet, a play that is truly overwhelming, and I want to talk about it, and at the same time I don't know how. The only way I can describe it is that it feels like this play is getting out of hand the further I get into it, and everything that has to do with it is getting out of hand. Like my notes are getting out of hand, the script for this video is getting out of hand, and I've never had such an experience. Yesterday I got this in the mail though, which is Harold Bloom's mammoth of a book that is called Shakespeare, The Invention of the Human. And he says in the introduction to the reader that the plays of Shakespeare remain the outward limit of human achievement, aesthetically, cognitively, in certain ways morally, even spiritually. They abide beyond the end of the mind's reach, which we cannot catch up to them. Yeah, so I really identify with this sentiment. I picked up Hamlet because I know that I'm gonna have to read it for my studies in autumn. So I thought I would already get it now and read it and have that done, you know. But I'm only just finishing Act 1, and it already is striking so many thoughts and memories inside of me. And I've written them all down in my Shakespeare journal. And that's the notes that I want to share with you today. So this is not an attempt of analyzing Hamlet, because I couldn't. But also I'm not so interested in that. I think that the value of great literature is not in the analyzing of the plot. It's in listening to what gets moved inside of us when we read over the lines. So that is what I would like to focus on more. So I hope that you can find something in this video. Maybe you can read along, or just find a new provoking thought or quote that you love and you can take with you. So let's go back to this first quote that I just read. So in the beginning of the book, Hamlet is grieving his father that has passed away, and his uncle, which took the place of being king, Claudius, is talking to him, and he says he's basically criticizing him for his grief, right? And he says that it shows a will most incorrect to heaven, a heart unfortified, a mind impatient, an understanding simple and unschooled. And I think in this case, I love the quote. I really don't like the king character. He seems pretty unintelligent so far. So I think this quote is a little bit beyond him, actually. But I do wonder what Shakespeare meant. Maybe we are incorrect when we're acting when our heart is unfortified and our mind impatient. I think we all know these moments when we do that, when we're just longing to fill a void in our life, when we're really impatient to get somewhere, and when that isn't actually really satisfying in the end. So we act out of desperation to feel whole, and that usually doesn't work so well. And the thing is that a mind impatient is also perpetuating itself, right? And it made me think of a really, really good talk by Kahn. He is a spiritual teacher. I will link the talk down below. And he basically talks about the fact that how relaxed you are, how satisfied you are, is like the most important measure to your success and your spiritual evolvement, basically. And I'm gonna read you a little quote from that talk that I think sums that up perfectly. When you are relaxed, it is a signification that you are working in harmony with the truth of reality, and life can work through you to bring about something that is far more extraordinary than the exhaustion of your personal will can ever manufacture. And when you're not relaxed, it means that you're trying to work faster than the universe wants you to work. You're focused and attached to the outcome, trying to run to the finish line, and you're continuing to go towards a physical goal and end point, while continuing to anchor the very energy that keeps you feeling so unfulfilled and dissatisfied. Yeah, so maybe an understanding simple and unschooled would be that you can be dissatisfied, then you do a bunch of things, and that leads to satisfaction. But maybe it's actually the other way around, that when you're dissatisfied, you first need to find satisfaction or relaxation, and then you can do things from a completely different place. I love this thought. And that's what I would understand as a mature and schooled mind, to be able to conceive of this notion, especially in a world where we're so identified with doing things, bombarded by messages of self-help, of getting things done, always being busy. Right, I think we're ready for like a shift there. I even once had an insight on LSD, where I thought about this notion of taking frustration or dissatisfaction as fuel. You know, some people say that, like, just let it fuel you, your frustration, your anger, and it will help you achieve great things. And the insight I got was basically that if you think you can achieve great things being dissatisfied, you have no idea what you can achieve when you're satisfied. And a little earlier in the play, when Horatio and Bernardo see the ghost of Hamlet's father, Horatio says, "It horrors me with fear and wonder." And that really made me think about the fact that most of the things we wonder about, we are intrigued by, also scare us a little bit, right? That fear and wonder so often seem to go hand in hand. Because something that we completely understand and completely feel safe with is not triggering this sense of excitement that there is something new, right? So I have to say when I'm a little bit afraid of someone for some reason, I'm actually really intrigued and wondering about what is there, you know, like I keep thinking about it a lot. I think if we think about the things we love or would love to do, like ambitions or great goals or someone we love, there's always a little bit of fear in the mixture as well. And I just love how, with this little phrase, Shakespeare manages once again to bring together these, you know, maybe seeming opposites so well. I remember in A Midsummer Night's Dream, he once, I don't know, I can't exactly remember, but he said something along the lines that jealousy and fear are really far apart, and you're usually not very afraid of people that you're jealous of, or you sometimes might even get along, things like that. Yeah, I just thought that was a lovely detail. Another line from Act 1, Scene 1 that I love is, "A mote it is to trouble the mind's eye." That one I have to keep thinking about a little bit. So in Scene 2, Shakespeare uses a phrase that we use all the time nowadays. Shakespeare is believed to have invented that phrase, and I bet you have used it countless times in your life as well. And the phrase is, "in my mind's eye." right? So Hamlet and Horatio see the ghost of Hamlet's father, and Horatio asks, "Where do you see him?" And Hamlet says, "In my mind's eye." And what I wonder about is, did people have this feeling of having an eye in their mind before Shakespeare coined that phrase? Or is that only something we can conceive of after someone is writing it down? Like, how contingent are our feelings upon words? I wonder that a lot, because German is my mother tongue, and there are just a few words in German that you cannot really translate to English. One of them is Fernweh, for example, which is the opposite of Heimweh, which means being homesick. So it's the opposite of homesick. So to mean, you are at home and you really long to go somewhere else. You long to be somewhere far away, basically. And I don't know if I would know that feeling so intricately if I wouldn't speak German. That might sound weird, but I very often think about the fact that words make feelings possible. Yeah, and Shakespeare is thought to have used other words for the first time in this play, that he invented words like admirable and horrid, that we're still using all the time today. And just to get back to the term of "in my mind's eye," I really wonder what he meant by that. Do you feel like you have an eye inside your mind that can see what is going on in there? Did he try to define meditation and the observing of thoughts and patterns and memories in your mind? What is your mind's eye seeing at the moment? I think that's a fascinating phrase. And there must be a reason why it endured for such a long time. At the end of scene 2, Hamlet says, "Till then sit still, my soul, foul deeds will rise, though all the earth overwhelm them to man's eyes." Right, so he's basically talking about this idea that bad things are not gonna stay hidden for long, which is also a biblical idea, right? It really made me think about some Eastern religion. I don't unfortunately know exactly which one, but they believe that after you die, you watch your entire life back. But not only that, you don't watch it back from your perspective, you're actually watching it back from the perspective of the person you are talking to, or that is like opposite of you, right? So you're not yourself, you are your mother that you're talking to. You're not yourself, you're the boyfriend you broke up with. You're the person you love. You're the person you lied to, cheated on, loved, and that the idea of karma is not one of punishment, but it is one of understanding, right? And that is the karmic route to experience it from the other side, and there will be enough for your learning for other lives then. Also made me think of a beautiful quote by Emerson. I have this super lovely little edition that is called The Spiritual Emerson, which I think has all of his best essays in there. This is really dear to my heart book. And in the beginning of Compensation, there's this poem, and it ends with this: "And all that nature made thy own, floating in air or pent in stone, will rive the hills and swim the sea, and like thy shadow follow thee." And then when we go over to Act 3, I think one of the most touching scenes in the play so far is when Polonius says goodbye to his son, Larches, and it's this heart-to-heart moment between father and son. And there seems to be something so essential about this moment when a child leaves the house and the father, who is representing the kind of person that is showing you direction, that is challenging you to be independent, right, is giving you his blessings, basically. It comes back in many books, in many movies, in the primal work I do when we talk about the father and the role of a father. It is exactly that. And I have to say, this is definitely the most touching variation of this scene that I've ever read. And I do want to read it to you now. So Polonius says, Polonius, by the way, is, I think, my favorite character so far. I really love it every time he speaks. Amazing. So he says, "Yet here, larches, aboard for shame. The wind sits in the shoulder of your sail, and you are stayed for. There, my blessing with thee. And these few precepts in thy memory, look thou character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption try it. Grapple them onto thy soul with hoops of steel. But do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new hatched, unfledged courage. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear that the post may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy, for the apparel oft proclaims the man. And they in France of the best rank and station are of a most select and generous chief in that. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for a loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night to day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Farewell, my blessing season this in thee." And I literally scribbled into the book next to this scene, someone stole this, right? Because to thine own self be true, and you cannot then be wrong to any other man. I already have this quote in my quote book, but supposedly from someone else, not from Shakespeare. So, that's the beauty of Shakespeare, is discovering him everywhere. And there's this great joke of, two people going to the theater watching Hamlet, and then afterwards the person A asks, "So how did you like it?" And person B says, "Yeah, it was alright, but it's full of cliches." And I do want to quickly zoom in on this idea of the clothes that he talks about. So costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy, right? So to me that means that you should buy good clothes that you can afford, but not to boast, right? And not to prop yourself up or something. And I looked up where that word gaudy comes from, and apparently emerged in the 1520s from the word gaud, which means to trick. Yeah, it means deception or to trick someone, right? So to dress that way would mean that you're trying a little bit too hard to be cool, basically. And I think it's beautiful because that word is just so well chosen. Because maybe in this goodbye speech to his son, the father is trying to tell him, to be grown up, to be mature, means to not trick people anymore. And I did look a little bit into French fashion in the past, and it's quite cool that he mentions the French as being a good example of that. Because apparently the French have a very different relationship to clothes than most other nations. They really care about the quality of their clothes, and they will have them for a long time, right? But they also won't like wear huge brands. You know, they say they're not billboards, they're not walking billboards. So yeah, lovely detail once again. Yeah, some other quotes I love from scene 3 is think yourself a baby, right? That Polonius says on how you want to be treated. Think yourself a baby. And also when the blood burns, how prodigal the soul lends the tongue vows. Beautiful. And also when he says to his daughter Ophelia that she basically shouldn't believe a man's words but his actions. It's also amazing scene. He says, do not believe his vows, for they are brokers, not of the dye which their investments show, but mere implorations of unholy suits. Yeah. So I'm gonna go over them a little bit quicker now because this video is already getting very, very long. The drinking scene is interesting though. Hamlet talking about drinking, right? So he basically says it is a custom more honored in the breach than the observance, which basically means it's more honorable to stay away from it than to indulge in it. At least that's what I think. And that it takes from our achievements, though performed at height, the pith and marrow of our attribute. And I think that is very relatable, that when you do something just because you're drunk or you're tipsy, it doesn't really count, and it almost takes the marrow out of your bones and the greatness out of your actions in a way. Rudolf Steiner apparently said that with every drop of alcohol you drink, you basically have to start all over again in terms of your spiritual development. So yeah, interesting thought. Yeah, I also love how when they see the ghost, Hamlet says, "It will not speak, then I will follow it." Right? The ghost doesn't speak, and that makes it very interesting. How often do we have that? That something is even more interesting because of the things maybe the person doesn't say. Also love scene 5, that every man has business and desire. I talked about that scene a little bit in my video about Borges already. I will link it somewhere up there so you can check that out if you want to. And the last phrase I underlined in scene 5, I think perfectly sums up my experience of reading this play so far, where Hamlet says to Horatio, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." Right? And I think there's also more things in this play that are dreamt of in my philosophy. Yeah, so overall I just feel like I am barely making a dent into this work. It's quite unpenetrable. Just going back to the Harold Bloom book on Shakespeare, this is so heavy. I ordered this and the complete works of Emily Dickinson in the mail, and they're both such heavy books that I was like trying to carry it downstairs with my left arm, and it got really tired. Yeah, but what did I want to say? Hold on. Yes, so he writes, "The more one reads and ponders the plays of Shakespeare, the more one realizes that the accurate stance towards them is one of awe." And I do really agree with this sentiment. It's so inexhaustible in a way. I feel like I could make this video all over again and say completely different things, right? That's wonderful. It's a little bit unnerving as well, because I feel like I'm not getting to the end of it probably ever. So thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you so much if you're a new subscriber and you've just found my channel. it really means a lot to me that you're here and that you've subscribed. And yeah, I just didn't think that my video about the 6 books that made me study would, be seen by so many people. And I'm very touched by the comments and by the response. And yeah, I do not take it for granted. As Ocean Vuong once said in an interview, it's always a privilege to have an audience. Thank you a lot, and I'll see you again in the next video. I cannot believe I went from, I don't know, like not even 100 subscribers to over 400 subscribers now. So that's super exciting. Okay, more to come. Bye.